Good afternoon. My name's Adam Steinbrecher, and today we're honored to hear from a visionary leader whose career exemplifies the fusion of cutting-edge technology, entrepreneurial grit, and unwavering moral conviction. Shaun Maguire is no stranger to trailblazing. Before joining Sequoia, Shaun earned his PhD in physics from Caltech and founded the cybersecurity company Expanse, which was acquired by Palo Alto Networks for over $1 billion. His experience extends to national service, having worked for the U.S. Department of Defense, including deployments to Afghanistan. At Sequoia, one of the world's most influential venture capital firms, Shaun led transformative investments, including SpaceX and innovative Israeli companies like Eon and Descartes. His portfolio isn't just a ledger of successes. It's a testament to his uncanny ability to spot potential where others see only possibility, backing startups that drive the global economy forward, create jobs, and spark revolutions. But what truly sets Shaun apart and what makes him an indispensable voice at this conference is his profound commitment to Israel. Since the harrowing events of October 7th, Shaun has been a vocal and tireless advocate for this nation's resilience and righteousness. As a profound supporter of Israel's defense and its people, he has not only spoken out against anti-Semitism, but has actively channeled his influence to bolster Israel's security and prosperity through investments and advocacy. He understands that Israel's story is not just one of survival, but of excellence. Excellence in technology and values in the human spirit. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my distinct privilege to introduce a man whose intellect sharpens the edge of progress and whose heart beats in the rhythm with Israel's own. Please give a warm Jerusalem welcome to Shaun Maguire.
Embarrassed. Thank you. That was way too kind, way too generous.
I thought that it was perfect. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Shanna Fold. I'm a journalist, and I'm very excited to speak with Shaun today on a multitude of different items. Shaun's depth reaches politically, technologically, and we're very excited to have him in Israel. So, Shaun, let's start with something that you brought up to me a little earlier. I was going to begin our interview talking about investing in Israel, which we will get to, but there is something at the top of mind for Shaun, which is Charlie Kirk, a friend of his, someone who was assassinated just last week, and I'd like to give you some time to share your response to that.
Obviously, this is a tough thing to talk about. We had lunch, and she asked me what's top of mind. I said, Charlie Kirk. I can't, this is really the only thing I've been thinking about the last few days. I've only known Charlie for a year and a half or so, but I really was lucky to get to know him pretty well and become his friend. First of all, I just want to give my condolences to his wife and to his children. For me, the assassination of Charlie, I think it encapsulates so many of the different things happening in the world right now, and that's part of why I can't stop thinking about it. And I would also say, people that are surprised by this, surprised either that it happened or by their reaction, I think if you were surprised by either of those, it means you haven't been paying attention to the last few years. You haven't been seeing the escalation of, violent rhetoric. And you haven't been paying attention post-October 7th to see, and obviously everyone here has, but to anyone that's not in Israel, the response of people celebrating the murder of innocent civilians, even the minute it happened. With Charlie, there's this, I think one of the things that Charlie was talking a lot about in the last few months of his life is basically how unhappy young kids are in the West, and how this real sincere feeling that their futures are not going to be as bright as they thought, or maybe their parents were, has been manifesting in deep, dark ways, a yearning for socialism, and therefore rise of socialism, a kind of moral inversion, a departure from God and morality, and I think like the assassination of Charlie speaks to a lot of what's been happening with the media, where in this, like in kind of in the media environment of today, you tell one side of a story as it happens, and even if that gets updated and turns out to be wrong, you never update the story the other way. And I mean, I could talk about this for a long time, and I'll pause and return it back to you, but I really can't think about anything else right now other than Charlie and just how emblematic it is for where we are in the West right now. And one thing I will say that I think, like I have no idea what will come from this, but I am seeing an awakening of young people in America that I hadn't really seen in a while, and so it does give me some optimism. And I personally believe part of why I'm here is I believe that like America and Israel are linked. We're deeply linked. I think the best way to talk, like one way to talk about Israel as an American, and one reason why Americans should care, is Israel is basically the front lines of fighting for Western values and democracy, and anything that happens in Israel is going to make its way to America later on. And so it's just, this is one of, I can give you 20 reasons why Americans should care about Israel, but this is one, and what we're seeing right now, I can't stop thinking about it.
Absolutely, and it's very sad that it takes a shooting or it takes something so terrible to wake people up or to call attention. So thank you for bringing us through that. I'd like us to segue into what you do on a day-to-day, which is you're a partner at Sequoia Capital, and you're managing portfolios, and many of them are here in Israel, which is very exciting. You've said that the smartest thing to do right now is invest in Israel, and I really got a kick out of this. You said that people should be thinking bigger than Wiz. Can anyone think bigger than $32 billion in this room? Well, Shaun is there.
I mean, I would say NVIDIA is bigger. Google is bigger.
Right. So we're going to open up our minds.
Why can't these be in Israel?
But why can't they be in Israel? So why don't you answer that question? Take us there.
So, I mean, look, to me, like my aspiration for Israel is that this country produces a homegrown $1 trillion company over the next decade or so. I think if that happened, there's nothing I can imagine that would change the country more than that. And I think if you don't have very high ambition, like you're never gonna get there. I've been following the tech ecosystem here for a few decades, and so when I joined Sequoia 6.5 years ago, one of the first things I wanted to do was invest more in Israel. And what I was seeing was a few things, but and it's obvious now, but was really seeing just a maturation of the ecosystem. All these second-time founders who I now know a lot of them personally. So I've been coming to Israel for about 20 years, and when I first came, and when you are raised in this, you may view it differently, but to me, the difference between Israel today versus 20 years ago is staggering in every way, even the psychology of the people. And in my opinion, this was still basically a poor country 20 years ago. And there's still room to go. There's still a lot of, people that are struggling to find jobs. There's still a lot of parts of the economy that need to develop. But I think it's very important for Israelis to view the arc of history here and literally to go back to the War of Independence and think about what this country was like in 47, 48. Barely produced anything. People were, trying to terraform the desert. We just had a speaker that's running water program this. He was saying that now about 60-70% of the residential water usage is desalination. So water independent, energy independent, making advanced technology. NVIDIA has 5,000 or so employees here. A big part of why NVIDIA is dominating the global tech landscape is because they acquired an Israeli company, Mellanox. And I just think when you have this, sometimes it's easier when you get to see these data points over time rather than when you live in it. And for me, I just see this unbelievable rate of progress here. And so if you go back 6 years, I just really had this feeling you have the combination of some of the smartest people in the world, quite literally the smartest people in the world, where you have a lot of second-time founders, where kids that grew up, and some of them have become my friends, without basically grew up poor, that sold their first company for $200 million to $500 million because it's the first time they had an opportunity to make money, and we're going to go start other companies. And you have an ecosystem of not just the founders, but employees, executives that know what they're doing and can go into these companies. And you have people that have unbelievable chip on their shoulder and grit that just comes from the environment, comes from the history, comes from my wife's family left Iran in the revolution. It's like whether you're an Iranian immigrant or Holocaust survivor, or your family came from Syria or Morocco or Iraq in the 50s, like everyone here has a chip on their shoulder and grit, resiliency, and like you cannot find a better combination for building than all those things.
Absolutely. And that grit, it takes me right into my next question, which is, can you share with us some challenges and successes that your Israeli portfolio companies have been through, and with a highlight on the last 2 years?
Sure. So I told this story last week, and so second time I'm saying this, sorry for being redundant. There was a moment, so Sequoia, we started investing. Sequoia actually had an Israeli office from 1999 to 2016. We shut it down because the companies were not big enough. We became very active again in early 2020, specifically when we invested in Wiz. We were the first investors in Wiz with Gilly Renan from CyberStarts. And anyways, we've been very active the last 6 years, but there was a moment right after October 7th, maybe like a week after, 2 weeks after, whenever people were getting called up from Miluim, or reserve duty, where we were kind of getting the reports, emails from all of our Israeli founders, we probably had 10 of them, saying what % of their employees were getting called up into reserve duty. And some of my partners were very nervous in this moment. Like we had at least 1 or 2 companies with 30% of their employees getting called for reserve duty. And we had a conversation like, are we over-indexed to Israel? Are these companies going to be able to handle losing 30% of their employees? And no one really knew. I personally had an extremely strong perspective, knowing the Israeli people, spending a lot of time in Israel. I was like, they're going to figure it out. They'll, somehow they'll pick up the slack. But it's hard to put this into words to people that haven't seen it. And so for that quarter, Q4 2023, we were all kind of holding our breath to see what the numbers would be. Will they hit their financial forecast for the quarter? And in January 1st, systematically a bunch of these Israeli companies sent emails with what their Q4 numbers were. And basically everyone hit their numbers. And that was a moment where with my partners, I was like, wow, this is something different. These people they're hardcore.
Yeah. Round of applause. Because we can all think of somebody in this room who's been in reserve duty. We all have somebody in this room who's been managing work, life, their kids, their wife, or the other way around. I have male friends who have their wives that are in Miluim, in reserve duty. And we all personally, each and every one of us in this room, know the deep challenge that it's been to keep life going in the last 2 years. So to see those returns and those numbers must be quite mind-boggling.
It was.
So let's end with, I'd love to have a little vision for everybody in the room of one Israeli company that has your attention right now, and what has been encouraging about them. And if you could leave us with some words of encouragement from your side. You've been quite beaten on the internet for your Israel advocacy. And I think that those two things go hand in hand, because it's resilience in every corner, whether it's professional or personal. So tell us about a little bit encouragement in your work for a company, and what you want to leave us with today.
Well, I'll start with the getting beat up on the internet, and I'll just say, people picked the wrong person. I was literally built for this in every way. I've built for information war, built for having people be mad at me. Built for physical war, and I think people, when you look at what people are doing here in Israel, it's just you can't be afraid to speak or put yourself out there. And for me, what I'm doing is I love Israel deeply, but what I'm doing is bigger than Israel. Like I really am fighting for the West. I truly believe that if the West lets Israel fall without supporting it, that the whole West will fall. Like I deeply believe that, and I wouldn't even say I believe it. I know that to be the case, and so this is a very big fight. It's a very important fight, and a lot of people don't understand how interlinked these things are. In terms of like companies I'm excited about, honestly, I think Sequoia we have an unbelievable portfolio here. I could name 5 or 6, and so I don't want to name only one and make the others feel bad. I would just say that, like, when I look at the history of kind of the tech ecosystem in Israel, obviously everyone knows how well cybersecurity has done the last couple decades. I mean, Checkpoint to Palo Alto, which Palo Alto is not technically an Israeli company, but it was an Israeli founder, incubated by Sequoia Capital, by my partner Jim Getz, quite literally incubated. But obviously Israel's done very well in cyber. Israel's also done incredibly well in silicon and communications. I think people don't give Israel enough credit in like the silicon history. But we're now, like, what I'm seeing the last 2 years is we're going way beyond these areas where Israel was good in the past. Like, there's now very promising companies in basically every category that matters. There's very promising AI companies. There's very promising, like, infrastructure companies. Israel has an incredible defense industry, Elbit, Rafael, IAI, etc. But there's something different between these government incubated companies, which was kind of the past, versus what's happening now with these bottoms up defense tech companies where individuals go and come up with an idea out of the army and start a company there. And the defense tech is very promising. So really, it's pretty amazing to see the ecosystem go from a small number of areas that are strong to like everything is growing.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a person who works with a company that's had 25% of today's NASDAQ companies at one point backed by Sequoia. Out of 30 companies per year that Sequoia invests in, 3 to 5 are in Israel. That's a huge percentage. And in addition, we have a great friend of Israel here, so let's have a round of applause. Thank you.